Hello, DawgNation. How you feeling today? I am Brandon Adams, and we got some good news for you on this Kroger commitment special. As five-star cornerback for the class of 2024, Ellis Robinson has just committed to the University of Georgia. Obviously, a little unusual here in recent years to see the way in which the traditional National Signing Day has been diminished. Clearly, most of the work for Georgia in the class of 2023 was already done in December, with a couple of names potentially out there to be paid attention to here on this traditional February signing day. And yet, by all appearances, the big headline for the Dogs today is going to be for the class of 2024. We'll all kind of process that in our own way. And yet, nonetheless, that does not do anything to reduce the excitement that Georgia fans ought to have for the fact that Ellis Robinson is now in the mix here for this class of 2024. Over the course of the next couple of minutes, we'll expect to talk to DawgNation's Connor Riley. Jeff Sintel will join us there as well. Jeff on assignment here, covering the recruiting stories about Robinson, who is the number 13 player, according to 24/7 Sports Composite, for the class of 2024. Number one cornerback in the country. And, of course, the number 6 player out of the state of Florida. Another recruiting win for Georgia there at IMG Academy. This is a program that that has been very good to Georgia in the past. Georgia's created quite a pipeline to what, in many ways, one of the nation's most talented programs year in, year out. And just a moment ago on ESPN television, Robinson made it official. And for Georgia, this obviously adds to what is already the number one class in the country for 2024. So for some Georgia fans who maybe last year kind of wondering, hey, you know, where is that momentum for winning a national championship? Where is the recruiting bump that comes because of a national championship? Maybe it took a few months last year for that to establish. Georgia, when it's all said and done, will finish with the number 2 class here for the class of 2023. But if you wondered where that was this time a year ago for the then current cycle in 2023, you already see a lot of growth in that direction here for the class of 2024. Robinson, a big get, going alongside what Georgia already has in the fold here for the class of 2024, as Georgia is number 1 with an arrow next to its name and seemingly only climbing up the ladder there on all of that. In fact, we'll check in with Jeff Sintel here right now, who is out west covering things for Georgia from a recruiting standpoint. Very interesting story with Jeff last night with Deuce Robinson. Robinson kind of furthering some of that information on television here just a moment ago. So let's bring in Jeff right now. And I guess, Jeff, let's talk first about the man of the hour here, Ellis Robinson, making his commitment to Georgia. Big get for the Dogs in the class of 2024, but I'll ask you, how big is this for Georgia to add Ellis Robinson?
Well, Brandon, hey, man, how's everybody, man? I tell you what, guys, it's kind of feels a little bit like, first of all, it's a 5-star. It's the nation's number 1 corner. Fran Brown was huge here. Kirby Smart, Will Muschamp, those guys were all huge. He kind of felt like from the first time, Brandon, he saw Georgia, he was there and he saw him practice, and he was like, man, he'd never seen anything like it. He told us through his recruiting process that he didn't know if his feelings could get any stronger. Brandon, here's a huge takeaway. His first time ever seeing the Dogs play live inside Sanford Stadium, man, that was for the Tennessee game on November the 5th. I don't know if it gets any better than that. Brandon?
Yeah.
You need all my finger and toes to count all these things up, but I think this is, by my count, the 6th time Kirby Smart has landed a 5-star cornerback for his program in the 9 recruiting cycles now. We're going to open it up and count the 2024 cycle to include Ellis Robinson, the 4th. But it kind of feels a little bit like Barry Alexander a couple years ago when there wasn't a big boom or a big chortle for you to go crazy on during National Signing Day for the current class. But so what does Georgia do when it's already cleaned up in the early period for all the 5-stars in the current cycle? Well, they go and get a 5-star in the next cycle up ahead. And that's what Ellis Robinson, the 4th, is now. He's now the highest rated commitment in the class. 2 5-stars, Brennan, already for 2024, and this one is a very, very good one.
And I want to talk about some of what you said right there, but I also want to bring you on a conversation that I was having before you joined us, which is that for some Georgia fans who kind of wondered maybe this time a year ago, hey, how much recruiting momentum is there going to be off the heels of what at the time was Georgia's first national championship? I don't think there's any doubt right now, and I don't know if you draw a line because of the national championship, but the point is the momentum that Georgia fans were hoping to see this time a year ago, it is clearly present here right now. Georgia, number 1 in the country for the class of 2024, arrow pointing up next to its name, it would seem. And so I think you already see a lot of I guess the pieces put in place here for this 2024 class to be one of the best that Kirby Smart's had here at Georgia. The early momentum would certainly suggest that for the Dogs, would it not?
Yeah, Brendan, I think that's really on point there. I mean, you look at Georgia now, they've already got 4 defensive commitments inside the top 40. 3 of them are for the Georgia secondary inside the top 40. But then they've also got the offensive players as well. They've got Dwight Phillips recently. They got Landon Thomas. Those are all top 100 players. Nye Carr. Perhaps one of the most interesting and underrated players in the whole class for 2024 is going to be Sokovia Hollywood White out of Cass High School in Cartersville, man. You see them, what they're putting together. Look, Peyton Woodward right there, top 35 prospect. DeMarcus Riddick, top 50 prospect. Jalen Hayward, nation's number 2 safety. Peyton Woodward, number 3 safety. Peyton Woodward's the number 2 safety. Jalen Hayward is the number 3 safety. You got Ellis Robinson, the nation's number 1 cornerback. Brandon, this all adds up and stacks up and funnels too. This might be the mic drop class for Georgia on both sides of the ball.
And then a name that you mentioned a moment ago I think is worth circling back to here, because this was not a famous person for me when he was originally hired by Georgia, but Fran Brown, much like maybe Chidera Uzodiribe has been as your outside linebackers coach, but what Fran Brown is doing as the cornerbacks coach, and as you said, of course Kirby Smart's influence on defensive backs going to weigh heavily here. Will Muschamp's going to be involved in some of these kinds of things too. But, man, Fran Brown, to me, Jeff, has the makings of a future star coach right now, and he has won so many of these early recruiting battles during his tenure here at UGA. How much can you say about Brown in all of this?
Yeah, Brendan, it kind of feels like, this is a guy now where if you're not recruiting your Nike shoes off at Georgia, then what are you doing? I mean, the power rankings of who the Georgia's most effective recruiter is, it's almost changes by every couple of months. You look and, Del McGee just announces his presence with authority that he can still go get a top 5 running back and a top 100 running back in the 2024 class earlier this week. And yet, you see Todd Hartley, obviously everybody's talking and thinking about Deuce Robinson right now, but you see a guy like Fran Brown, Brandon, and really one of the things, the really neat little story is Fran Brown knew Ellis Robinson back when he was a prepster and a high school player. He's from Connecticut. That's where he's from. Played Pop Warner youth ball in New Haven. Went to Iona Prep in New York for the first couple of seasons. And that's when Fran Brown intersected when he was at Rutgers. And he saw the talent and, tried to start recruiting him for Rutgers. But he kind of knew that Robinson articulated to me that, perhaps that he wasn't going to get a 5-star corner prospect like Robinson at Rutgers. But when he got to Georgia, Fran Brown, it was a different story, a new ball game, and it was game on. And, Brown is really important. I mean, it was so funny. This is one of the most meticulous, prepared, intelligent. I know some Dog fans were watching his signing day streaming special on ESPN2. He wanted a school that had top-notch academics. He wanted a school that played man coverage. He wanted to have a great relationship with position coach and head coach. He wanted a visually appealing campus. He wanted a school with strong academics, and he wanted to make his commitment before his senior season. And very meticulously, he just knocked out all those things. I thought also what was really cool, everybody got to see it, Brandon. I want to make sure they hear this point about Ellis Robinson. He chose February 1st to make his college commitment because his father, Ellis Robinson III, has had some bad news in his life previously. He lost both of his parents. That would be Ellis Robinson III, Ellis's father. He lost both of his parents, which would be Ellis's grandparents, in the month of February. So that's a month with, not so many positive memories.
Yeah.
And he wanted to shine some goodwill and hope on the month of February now in his family, where some good things can happen in February. And on February the 1st,
nice.
He makes a commitment to Georgia. This is a very goal-centered, a very positive young man. Hope everybody saw the signing day speech where he basically thanked everybody that was in the New Haven, Connecticut phone book, including just about anybody else that had touched and intersected his life coming up as a player. Really strong citizen, really strong young person. He would be something at a university and an asset to a school, regardless of how well he played football. Ellis Robinson, you want to talk about a complete corner? He can run support. He can play zone. He can play man. He can play inside. He can play outside. He can come up and just stifle guys on the corner. And he can also play some safety if you need him with some really long arms. ESPN, Brandon, even tracked his speed in game analytics at 22 miles per hour for IMG Academy. Brandon, that is the proving ground of high school football in America. It's a boarding school powerhouse. Georgia and IMG have had a strong relationship, and that IMG pipeline continues to be very great for the Georgia brand today.
I want to ask you one more question about Ellis Robinson, and then I want to get to some of the other news of the day here on this Kroger Commitment Special, as Georgia has added 5-star cornerback Ellis Robinson for its class of 2024. Who is the team that takes the silver medal here? Who's the runner-up here for Robinson services? Is it Alabama? Is this a Georgia-Alabama head-to-head win for the Dogs?
Yeah, I think that's one you probably count it to. ESPN was already trying to spice up some drama there about Colorado and Coach Prime coming in and taking another player with a long lead and a long headway. But, Brendan, this is just one where it's always felt right to him. Him and his parents talked freely about how Georgia was just the perfect fit. Brandon, Georgia was the leader coming out of his visit for the Tennessee game. Georgia was the leader going into his visit for the national championship parade and trophy celebration. He made his commitment silently to the Georgia staff while everybody else was posing with trophies and hanging out in Sanford and analyzing everything that every Bulldog that was up at the podium said. Well, Georgia was working on the recruiting trail, and they picked up a huge silent commitment for the 2024 class back on January the 10th, I believe, or January the 14th. And that's all revealed today on February the 1st for a very heart-tugging reason, if you ask me.
Okay, so let me go to some of the other news here for a moment. You had a great story last night at DawgNation.com looking at the thought process with the 5-star tight end Deuce Robinson. That's the guy that I think for a long time we thought we'd be talking about it here on this particular day, but Robinson told you yesterday he wasn't sure yet what he wanted to do, and he just told the ESPN TV cameras that his thought process is essentially the same place that it was with you last night, just unsure of the decision that he wants to make. So no decision at all then coming for Deuce Robinson. What does that mean for you, Jeff, that Robinson will exit National Signing Day still kind of an open prospect, open to be recruiting, considering baseball, and I guess anything else that comes his way? Where do you think this goes after this for the 5-star tight end?
Well, Brandon, I know, very considerate young man, very considerate family. I mean, Brandon, he knows you got shows to do until spring practice, man.
That's true.
And he knows you got to stretch out some content and have something to talk about. No, not really. This is a young man, I think, that could, if people make the mistake today that, he wants the spotlight, he wants to keep everyone's attention, I think that couldn't be farther from the truth. It wasn't expected for him to make his decision today. And, Brandon, I'll be honest, the way I analyze this situation, there's a lot of moving parts right now. There's the baseball draft. There's what scouts are beginning to tell him, and his stock is going up. There's what's happening at Georgia. Is Todd Monken going to be around? Is he going to take one of those jobs with the Ravens or the Bucks? There's a time here where, I wouldn't be shocked if maybe he doesn't even make a signing, or perhaps the commitment comes a little bit later on down the road. But, for me, you look at this unique situation, Brandon, we don't cover 5-stars like this that have this situation. When you try to read the green on this, I don't know if college baseball makes the most sense for him, because if he wants to play college football, and, the way you understand where Deuce is at right now is you got to figure out where he's trying to go. And where he's trying to go is he wants to play both pro football and pro baseball at the same time. Well, if you're on a college campus, it's going to be hard to do that in the spring when a Coach Hartley or a Coach Riley or a Coach Smart or a Coach Sarkeesian or a Coach Lanning, wants you to play tight end in spring practice, when also the baseball coach on campus wants you to get some swings in the cage and bat third and go play some center field as well at 6'6" and 225 pounds. It makes it much easier if he's picked in the MLB draft, and like we've seen it a lot of times, and everybody's going to bring up situations. Kyler Murray's a recent situation. Brian Jordan, that's kind of, Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson. I think those are the names everybody searches for when it comes to professional athletes playing both football and baseball at the same time. For me, I think the thing he's looking for is to be drafted professionally, and that would open up the chance for him to be able to be a college football player and then develop himself as a baseball player in the summers when he's not playing football. Very interesting situation. I think there's still a lot of things going up and down here. There's a lot of things to consider. One thing I do know, Brandon, he can barrel up a baseball. I got
Yeah.
to see him in a cage yesterday, and he's got a strong future in that game as well. 6'6", 220. He can really load up. He can really mash the thing. He's advancing his skills as a hitter. And then you look at him, Brandon, I'll just be frank. Everybody ranks him as the nation's #1 tight end. I've never seen that with Deuce Robinson. I've seen him as a wide receiver type. I've seen him as a Mike Evans type. And, maybe for Monken, he can either go coach Mike. He can go coach Mike Evans on Sundays in the NFL, or maybe he can coach a player with a similar skill set on Saturdays in Georgia as well. I mean, Deuce Robinson, Brandon, I don't know if we've ever covered a 5-star quite like this in our time here reporting for the Dogs. And I think this story has still got a little bit more legs to it.
Let me ask you a blunt question. If the Major League Baseball draft was today, would he be taken in the first round?
I don't know that, because here's the thing, Brennan, and I'm not going to try to not answer your question directly, but
Sure.
Here's the thing I know. I got some contemporaries that cover Major League Baseball, and especially that tell me what it's like, being a Major League scout and also covering Major League Baseball prospects. Brendan, you have to be so right with your bonus pool of money that those players you pick in the first 3 rounds, those first 100 picks, because it's allocated your bonus money, your pool money. I think you've seen that story kind of show up sometimes with Cole Wilcox, how Wilcox got 3rd-round money in the first round, so it didn't he got 1st-round money in the 3rd round, so it didn't really matter, where he was drafted. What I mean by that, Brendan, is you just got to be absolutely so right. Those picks have to sign.
Yeah.
Those picks have to contribute with the money that goes in there. And the thing with football hanging over it, I think it makes Robinson less of a sure thing, not because of his skill and his acumen in the cage or shagging flies in center. It's because you got to wonder, okay, is this guy going to be a football player? Are we only going to have him certain months out of the year? I think that's what makes it complicated with Deuce Robinson. Maybe not so much stuff on the diamond, but the football part of this, which is his goal and his dream. He's articulated this to me many times, Brandon. What he wants to do is to play both in the NFL. He wants to be an inspiration to young men to not give up the game of baseball while they're still trying to pursue their dreams in football. He wants the games to eventually tell him what he has to choose and where he has to go. But right now, he's got brilliant, shining, futurist bright opportunities in both sports. And I think that's why the first-round question for me is hard to answer, because if he was strictly a first-round talent and he's developing himself solely as a baseball player, well, then that's a different evaluation for me without the football part of it.
All right, so I want to do one more thing, and we'll come back to Ellis Robinson again before we say goodbye to you. I joked about this on DawgNation today, that there's an old adage that sometimes it seems like coaches share with each other, which is when it comes to recruiting and a guy getting ready to make a decision, if you don't know, it ain't you. And it got real quiet about Walker Lyons over the course of the last 24 to 48 hours, where it seemed like nobody really knew much of anything about what he was doing, which is probably the only indication that we needed that Lyons was going somewhere else other than UGA today. I don't know that I would have tabbed USC for that, but that is the case. In fact, we'll show off here the edit graphic of Lyons, the tight end, eventually joining the USC roster, I guess committing and signing today and eventually landing there after his mission trip is concluded. So this is another little bit of an unusual saga, seemingly a very talented tight end, long-range project here, though, in terms of when he'll actually be a college football player. What do you make of Lyons choosing to stay out west? One-time Stanford commit, going to stay out there as well. What do you make of that situation?
Yeah, as I try to be mobile on the spot here, I'm trying to look for a better shot because I knew I had a great view. I hope you guys saw it, a great view of some Arizona mountains out there behind me. But after a while, I was like, man, let me just let the people talk to me. You know what I think? It was kind of an upset, Brandon. The schools here that were involved, I had a long kind of in-depth conversation with Walker out in Texas at the All-American Bowl, and he wasn't really feeling USC at all. He was feeling Utah and he was feeling Georgia because those were the schools that have proven track record with the tight end. And maybe not so much a school like USC, but, he's a unique story, Brandon, because he's Church of Latter-day Saints. That's his faith, his Mormon mission. Going to start maybe in about another 3 weeks or so. He's going to go to Norway for 17 months. Who knows if Lincoln Riley will be in the NFL by then or whatever,
right,
if there will be throwing to the tight end at USC by then. But, it's funny how, Brennan, all this kind of stuff is connected by spider webs a little bit, because you got USC also still a major contender for Deuce Robinson. They're one of the schools that I think are still in it. Everybody floats the Dodgers thing there with USC because it would be so much easier for him to play football at USC and maybe be picked by the Dodgers. But, of course, the farm system for the Los Angeles Dodgers is not right near Chavez Ravine or whatever, is not near USC, for example. But, with Walker Lyons, he's a guy that, man of the year for the All-American Bowl. I think he's a really complete tight end and a true tight end, not like a guy like Robinson, where I kind of see him making a lot of plays out on the edge in college football. But, he's a guy that it's like do not open until the summer of 2014 for Walker Lyons with the USC Trojans after he gets back from his mission trip. But I think USC, and you wonder if NIL kind of played a part here a little bit. I think how USC kind of closed the door late with schools like Stanford. He was once committed to Stanford. When David Shaw moved on, he decommitted. Utah was in there. BYU had some family ties there as well. But he was really talking to me about Georgia and Utah because of the way they used the tight end. And to see USC take the prize here shows that the Trojans were able to come back and secure a victory.
So let's circle back here one more time to the recruiting win that Georgia does get today. Ellis Robinson, 5-star defensive back for the class of 2024. For those who are just joining us, Jeff, this is going to probably stand to be the big win for the Dogs here today. Give me a final thought on what this means for Georgia, its pursuit of the number one class for 2024, its chance to stay rich when it comes to great collection of cornerbacks here in this program. What matters about Robinson to the Dogs right now?
Yeah, I mean, Brendan, it's going to be a monumental class, and everybody says that, and it feels good to say that in February, but experience leads us to believe that the way schools, not just these young men, feel about their eventual commitments in February don't often come to fruition. But I kind of feel confident saying that there's a lot of silent commitments out there. There's a lot of guys that will eventually choose Georgia. Ellis Robinson will not be the only 5-star in the class of 2024, but Brandon, this one is being built differently. Much like 2023 was excellent, it was very top-heavy with defensive players. If Deuce Robinson chooses Georgia, then I think that becomes 3 offensive players inside the top 100 that will be Dogs. But I think 2024 has a whole lot more potential on the offensive side of the ball. Of course, we're out in Arizona this week. We're going to get a chance to see Deuce Robinson a lot this week. We're going to get a chance to see the 5-star quarterback Dylan Raiola throw this week out in Arizona. Some news there for him. And I know you like to track these things for your conspiracytheory.com membership, but Deuce Robinson's old high school just welcomed in Dylan Raiola. Everybody knows who Dylan Raiola is, the 5-star quarterback. Sure. He just transferred from Chandler to Pinnacle High School today. Today's actually his first day, I believe, on campus. And the number one prospect is going to go play for the same high school program that Deuce Robinson just finished out. And I'm going to tell you, Brandon, there's going to be a story that comes up on DawgNation.com eventually. There are a lot of commonalities between Dylan Raiola and Deuce Robinson. Of course, both of them are chiefly considering Georgia. And let's also make sure we're responsible and objective here and also say USC as well. But both of those guys definitely training together. They've been training buddies for a while. They know how good one another is. They've been working out together for years. And I know Deuce told me yesterday that if it works out and maybe the good Lord leads him to a certain spot and it leads Dylan Raiola to a certain spot, well, he'd certainly love that because those two young men are certainly like-minded. They have the same trajectory to their goals. Great people. They can't learn enough. They can't study enough. They can't get better enough. It's an inexhaustible appetite to lead them on the path to their goals and be worth watching. And certainly the 2024 class, if you start wondering how Georgia can get better and improve its altitude for where it currently is right now, we'll keep signing those defensive players like Ellis Robinson, who commits today, but also go get more of those key cornerstone offensive players like a Deuce Robinson and perhaps potentially himself coming down the line when he gets all of his things figured out with his decision. And then the thought of the nation's number one overall quarterback as well, and Dylan Raiola. You know how Georgia gets better. You know how Georgia plays better than what it's already shown the last 2 seasons to show that the Georgia program is certainly getting into those dynasty footprints right there that Alabama had over the last 15 years. Well, you sign a lot of guys like Ellis Robinson and Deuce Robinson and Dylan Raiola. and that's a perfect recipe to get there.
I think that's well said, Jeff. I'll also invite folks to check out the story that you wrote last night, DawgNation.com, as it relates to Deuce Robinson, kind of finding out what might be happening for him next. People should check that out. It sounds like you've got some good stuff coming with Dylan Raiola eventually there, too, and we'll be interested in all of that. So safe travels. Thanks for being on the road out there for us, covering all of this information. We'll look forward to talking to you back here again on DawgNation again very soon.
Yeah, Brandon. Hey, I thought it was really interesting what he had to say about Todd Monken. What happens if Todd Monken leaves the Bulldogs? That's a great quote in there that he certainly hammered that one.
We talked about that on we talked about that on DawgNation Daily today. I thought that was also very interesting too, Jeff, and I hope that people will read that because that certainly became very big fodder on DawgNation Daily today, no doubt about it.
Take it easy, buddy. I got to go write some stories.
All right, sounds good. Good stuff from Jeff Sintel out there in Arizona. Kroger commitment special. Five-star defensive back Ellis Robinson has committed to the Bulldogs here for the class of 2024. And speaking of Kroger, obviously we're excited about all the recruiting stuff going on here this time of year, but also looking towards Valentine's Day there as well. And as you're getting stocked up for everything you need for Valentine's, whether it be the greeting card or the gift card or the cookies or the candies or the cake, whatever your special thing is to get ready for this Valentine's time of year, our friends at Kroger can help you out with all that, including great savings as well. So visit their website, Kroger.com/Valentines for more on that. That's Kroger.com/Valentines for more on that. Of course, we appreciate Kroger being a part of what we are doing here today. Let me reset some of the Georgia news for a moment. Then I want to get to some other stories here before we sign things off. Obviously, the reason we're on air right now is because five-star cornerback for the class of 2024, Ellis Robinson, has committed to Georgia here today. The two names of note for the class of 2023, in the case of Walker Lyons, the tight end, he is going elsewhere, going to USC, although, as we've now explained many times, it's going to be at least a year and a half before he gets there because of a mission trip he's taking through his church. But nonetheless, eventually Lyons will play college football, and he says today he's going to do that for USC. And then the other name that Georgia fans definitely had their eye on is the five-star tight end Deuce Robinson. Eventually the Dogs may get Deuce, but it's going to be a while before that happens. Robinson telling ESPN today the same thing he told Jeff Sintel last night, that he's simply not ready to make his decision yet, and so therefore will postpone that, with USC seemingly fighting for Georgia. Also, the Major League Baseball draft looming here as a possibility as well. According to Robinson's own words, we will keep following that wherever it goes. No doubt that is the case. As far as a couple of other stories to get to here for a moment, I say this with full understanding that it's going to sound hyperbolic, and yet I mean it. South Carolina today got one of the biggest recruiting wins the program has ever gotten. They won with the five-star athlete Nicholas Harbor. It's not exactly sure what position Harbor will play in college. He could play on the defensive side of the ball. He could be a tight end. This is a big dude who's also extraordinarily fast, like a world-class speedster in a lot of ways, an Olympic hopeful. Harbor choosing South Carolina today over Oregon, so the Gamecocks get a massive recruiting win. That today, I would say, ranks as among the bigger stories of the traditional February National Signing Day. We've got some resolution to the Jaden Rashada scenario. Maybe this is a little bit of a surprise. It was a surprise to me. I don't know if it was a surprise to everybody else or not. But it sort of seemed like Rashada was likely heading towards TCU. That's what I thought. I don't know if that's – maybe I misread that situation, but I thought that Rashada was heading towards TCU. The other school that he had visited was Arizona State, and ultimately Rashada chose the Sun Devils today. Now, this is amazing because the brand-new Arizona State head coach is Kenny Dillingham, who's very young, had been an Oregon offensive coordinator this past season, got the job at Arizona State, and steps onto campus with a gigantic win here with a quarterback. And my guess is he got Rashada for a lot less than $13 million that Florida had apparently promised him. So this is the resolution of that situation. Rashada going to Arizona State, pairing with a young offensive-minded head coach, Kenny Dillingham. Kind of interesting scenario here in the Valley of the Sun, but Sparky gets a big recruiting win when it comes to Jaden Rashada. The other news that's out there is Cormani McClain did make it official. He is now, inked and signed with Colorado. There'd been a little bit of chatter, you may remember a few days ago, about, this is all hearsay, and you feel weird for even bringing this up, but a coach at a coaching clinic had said that he had heard Nick Saban say that a defensive back had wanted to come to Alabama and wanted $800,000 to do so, and Saban told him no. It seems like if this story is true, that the player that Saban was talking about was McClain, who, fresh off not signing with Miami back during December, was kind of on the open market, and there was some thought that Alabama might be a factor here. Maybe you take the Saban word seriously in all of this. But it was actually Deion Sanders in Colorado that swoop in here, and they get this win with McClain. So that had been kind of out there. It's now official. McClain going to Colorado, Jaden Rashada going to Arizona State. As said before, the five-star athlete Nicholas Harbor choosing South Carolina over Oregon. Very big win for Shane Beamer and the Gamecocks there on that. But Georgia fans, their news of note, five-star defensive back Ellis Robinson for the class of 2024 has joined up with the Dogs, adding to what is already on paper the number one class in the country for the following cycle here on this day in which the 2023 cycle officially comes to a close. So thanks for being with us here on this Kroger Commitment Special. Stay close to DawgNation for more insight on what Robinson brings to the table and what's next for UGA recruiting. And, of course, I'll see you back here tomorrow for DawgNation Daily as well. Have a great afternoon, everybody.